Well, another shoe has dropped in the seemingly endless, although recently quiet, OGL controversy from Wizards of the Coast. Although this is less Wizards of the Coast and more the very competition that Wizards feared. More on that in a second. I just want to take a quick reminder to let you folks know that this is brought to you by our friends at Hellebarde Games. Hellebarde Games makes the kind of adventures that they'd like to play, whether it's for 5th edition for the OSR or Castles and Crusades. Old School is in play at the table with Hellebarde Games, and you can check them out on DriveThruRPG or on their website, hellebardegames.com. And folks, also a quick reminder, if you haven't already, please click that subscribe button, click the bell icon for notifications so you can get all the latest updates and all the latest news and links to live streams and our virtual conventions and all that cool stuff that we offer you. Now, let's take a gander at this, and this is actually coming to us from PC Gamer because everybody and their brother has had their eyes on this situation, and I'll link to the article below, but let's take a quick look at this over here. The creators of Pathfinder have released their own version of D&D's controversial OGL, and it could have a huge impact on all tabletop RPGs by Robin Valentine. Pathfinder's answer to the Open Gaming License, dubbed the Open RPG Creative License, or ORC license, has been completed and released for public use. Created as a direct response to Wizards of the Coast's pretty nefarious attempts to clamp down on the use of its Open Gaming License to its own profit, the ORC license is designed to be a system-agnostic, perpetual, and irrevocable open gaming license that allows any game to create a safe environment for collaboration. And of course, they cover the OGL controversy briefly there. We've talked about it a lot. I've done tons of videos on it, and you can come back and you can take a look at their point of view. But they come back and say, even though WOTC turned on its OGL plans, the damage was already done. Brother, you just ain't whistling Dixie. Any company existing as a part of the wider D&D ecosystem, whether producing its own games or using elements of D&D's rules or D&D compatible adventures across any edition of the game, past and present, was forced to take stock. And let's just pump the brakes for a second. They're not kidding. All right? That is a very interesting nod. All of us here in the OSR were just as impacted as people working on stuff for 5e with an eye to 6th edition. Yes, Wizards of the Coast, it's 6th edition. I'm sorry. Suddenly basing your business future on trust in WOTC's ongoing intentions seemed foolhardy, and many companies began to work to break their links with the OGL completely. For the most part, by revising or rewriting their products to no longer be beholden to it. Into that chaos, Pathfinder publisher PAIZO launched development of its high-profile ORC license, backed by a huge alliance of other tabletop companies who pledged to use it. It's a direct rival to the OGL, intended to give the industry a new, safe license to rally around. So, now that it's finally here, how does it actually work, and what impact can we expect it to have? And then they launch into an explanation of it here. Rather than being tied to a specific system, it's intended to work for any RPG. Once a publisher releases their game under the license, its system and mechanics are then covered, allowing other creators to use those elements in their own work without fear of any legal issues. It also explicitly works in perpetuity. In other words, once something is released under the license, it's covered by it forever. That's a pretty direct rebuttal to WOTC's attempted OGL changes, which were widely criticized for attempting to retroactively alter an agreement that was originally presented as irrevocable. Now, two questions. Is it really irrevocable? In the ORC license, is it truly irrevocable? Or are they going to say, it's irrevocable and we can change the guts of it? The license is irrevocable, we can just change the internals of it. Because we know how these things can go. And does it also apply if you want to make a game that is derivative of Pathfinder, which itself is a variation of course, Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 edition? To cement that further, the license itself is not owned by PAIZO. It has been released into the public domain, meaning that any company is free to use it, but no company, present or future, has any direct control over it. Even PAIZO completely changed its intentions overnight. By design, the genie cannot be put back in the bottle. That's an optimistic point of view to take. Let's keep reading. It's a remarkable gesture on PAIZO's part, given the legal work involved here performed by Azora Law. A not insignificant amount of time and money will have gone into this document, and its publishers putting it into the public domain for free. What the ORC license is ultimately intended to do is foster and protect at a new scale the very culture of collaboration that PAIZO itself grew out of. There's certainly some self-interest to it. PAIZO is D&D's most direct rival and clearly stands to benefit from a world where WOTC's grip is lessened even mildly. But it is also a case of a company very directly putting its money where its mouth is over its principles, hoping to shape the whole industry's future for the better. And then they talk about how open RPG licenses work, which again, we're not going to go into. You guys can read that later. But they are talking about the possible impact of ORC. Publishers have created their own individual open licenses specific to their products over the years, or released their games under a Creative Commons license, and we have seen some of the effects. Obviously, D&D is a main example. It's a symbiotic relationship. Being able to piggyback on D&D's popularity allows publishers to reach a huge audience for their products, and in turn, the huge availability of products for the game feeds into that popularity. For better or worse, the OGL is a huge part of the reason why D&D has been able to become so dominant in the industry. Well, I mean, I could make the argument that barring the initial release of Vampire the Masquerade, D&D, even in the bad years of TSR, has always been the dominant RPG, but that's just my personal opinion. Maybe yours differ. At the other end of the scale, we've seen smaller games able to extend their influence in a similar way. Landmark indie RPG Apocalypse World's equivalent of a license is a fairly vague online policy statement, but it was enough to spawn a huge and still growing range of Powered by the Apocalypse games, each of which has pushed the mechanics in a new direction and new genres. PBTA has ended up shaping much of the style and philosophy of modern narrative-driven play, though through games such as Monster of the Week, Dungeon World, and City of Mist. We're now even into a second generation. Blades in the Dark, for example, grew out of PBTA-driven change and has become so popular in its own right that it has its own popular Forged in the Dark license, which has fueled yet further innovation. But a lot of this collaboration to date has been based on shaky foundations. Among indie creators, much of it simply works on trust or existing Creative Commons licenses that don't cover any of the specifics of RPG design. Larger publishers have had to create their own specific licenses, each using their own legal frameworks. The potential of the ORC license is in creating a universal default, a freely available license that everyone already understands based on commonly accepted principles, with a strong enough legal foundation to ensure creators can feel fully secure investing their time and resources into projects using it. If widely adopted, it could hugely encourage publishers to make their systems open and creators to work with those systems, allowing many more games to expand beyond their original means. For us as consumers and players, the potential benefits are huge. It means more supplements and adventures for your favorite games, more opportunity for growth and innovation in the hobby as creators build on each other's works, greater freedom for virtual tabletops to integrate different game systems, and more opportunities for smaller publishers to actually begin to compete with D&D and its enormous level of support. But will it be widely adopted? That's harder to say, but I, that is the author, thinks the wind is blowing in its favor. Not only is it backed by one of the biggest RPG publishers, PAIZO's alliance is huge. If those signed up stick to their word, rather, you can expect games as diverse as Call of Cthulhu, Fantasy Age, Mutants at Masterminds, and Numenera to start using the ORC license, and that's a pretty promising open salvo. The roll call also includes most of the major virtual tabletops such as Roll20 and Foundry VTT, which have only grown in importance as more and more players take their campaigns online and stand to benefit from being able to freely build more game systems into their platforms. I don't expect the ORC license to be met with much resistance either. Though it's pushing the concept to a new level, this kind of open licensing is an idea many RPG publishers are already comfortable with and supporting. The D&D OGL controversy shone a brighter light on the idea than ever, engaging the community in discussion and raising questions about what they want to see in open licenses. Created in the aftermath of that, and with a lengthy period of community feedback, the ORC license has been able to cater directly to what people have demanded. Speaking just for myself, I just wanted to not get sued for publishing a D&D adventure. And apart from everything else, it represents a banner for WOTC's competitors, large and small, to rally around. D&D is enjoyed by huge amounts of people all over the world, and that's great, but the dominance of that one game over the hobby has been unhealthy for a long time, stifling creators unable or unwilling to leave its orbit. For PAIZO, any stand against D&D is its own reward, but in giving smaller creators a clear gathering point, it could be a step towards a future where they're able to combine their strengths and compete for a fair industry. The result could be a more diverse and interesting hobby for us all. So, shots fired. PAIZO has unleashed the beast. They are saying, hey, however you want to put your game under this, it's out there. But let me ask you something before you hit the comments. If you were a game dev, would you do that? Would you put your game under the ORC license and let people develop for it, knowing someone could take it and start doing things with it you might not like? Just a little bit of food for thought, but please don't just listen to me. Let me know what you think down in the comments below, and we'll discuss this. We've of course got live streams coming up. We've got more content coming to you. Thank you. We're currently at 4,673 subscribers on the channel, which is just phenomenal. And I, of course, will do my best to keep you guys informed in anything and everything that's going on. Because, guys, my fellow old schoolers, this does affect us too. Okay? Could you see a time when Osric or Swords and Wizardry might move under the ORC license? Think about it. It could happen. But until then, everybody, keep your lawyer on speed dial, and I'll talk to you next time. Peace.